the kids in that school will be asked to design artwork around the names selected for
Oh,
the
cool.
snowplow.
We're live.
That will be put on, they'll be put on vinyl
We're
and
too
attached
excited.
to the snowplow for the season.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's another element of getting them involved.
Good evening. Welcome to the Business and Economic Development Committee meeting for Tuesday, October 3rd. It is now 5:40. We're around the table, our committee members, Yakubaga, Schaefer, Davitt, and we also have Councilor Leonard tonight. Ann Krieg, our development director, is joining us virtually.
Yeah.
Hey,
She's just not on camera. But I hear.
you're
Yeah,
hearing?
and for some reason, the start video button won't turn on, so I'll figure it out.
Okay. I'm going to introduce the first item and then we're going to go on to some other things we need to act on tonight. The first on the agenda is I asked Ann to put on here and she responded to what I suggested. We only have 2 more meetings tonight and 1 more BED meeting before the end of the council year. And so I went back and looked through the old BED discussions and agendas and issues and some of the things on the council to just put together a summary of what I thought were some of the outstanding issues. And this isn't meant to really deal with all of this tonight or have substantive discussion. It's meant as a tool to get us through the month so that we can do a handoff from this committee to the next committee and say, these are some issues that received discussion during the last year, and some of them for longer than that. And these are some suggestions for the next committee to discuss and act upon. I don't think we encumber them too much, unless, and there may be some things that we can deal with in our next BED meeting more substantively. And I think Ann has identified some things here that she'll bring back to BED or to the council during October. So that we had a similar discussion last night at Government Ops. About trying to identify those issues which were not fully resolved this year, that need further, most of which need further discussion. I mean, some of them may be ready for action. And this only reflects what I suggested to Ann to bring forward for discussion. And I think it's for all of you to add to it or delete from it, to make changes, and we can do that and we could bring it back for further discussion at our next committee meeting after everybody has a chance to maybe digest it a little bit more if they haven't had enough chance so far. I know Councilor Trumbull isn't here tonight either. I'd like to have his input as well as input from other councilors. So without going through each one of these things in detail, I'd ask if there were any specific reactions or items that you suggest we expand, or anything that's on your mind that would be a BED issue that isn't identified that you would like to suggest we package up and pass on to the next committee. Councilor Davitt.
Thank you. And thank you actually for putting this together, especially as I'm leaving council as well. As you, it is nice to see what is being moved on, particularly as always, there could be 3 new people. I really appreciate the work Ann did to update and to see where things are going to go that makes sense. But knowing full well that as much as I'd like to see everything I care about on council done by November 7th, it's not how it works. So I didn't see anything that I thought was missing. It's very comprehensive, understandably. And overall, I thought it was great. What we can do and get updates on and close out before a new council is great, rather than having to always bring everyone up to speed. But I think that everything that's laid out here makes sense to me in terms of timing and holding, until we have more staff who can do it rather than starting something that will then get passed off again and all of that. So overall, I appreciate the work on this and I support what you put forward.
Councilor Leonard.
I know we hit on this point last time. I don't have anything specifically itemized to add to this list right now. I share Councilor Davitt's comments to you as well. This is sort of what I would like to see for each new committee chair is whoever is the outgoing committee chair to whatever their draft is for what they've accomplished or what has been discussed or things that are ongoing or things that have been discussed to be priorities for whatever committee is happening. I think having a document like this to go to whoever's going to be the next committee chair, it makes it much clearer for that chair what priorities need to be evaluated overall and what conversations need to be planned for the upcoming year with the other committee members as well. And so an approach like this for every single committee is, I think, going to make all of our discussions in the future less raw and much more ordered and structured so that we can really get our priorities in line. So I would like to mimic this type of planning and structure for committees, for all committees. I want this to be an established precedent from here on out. And potentially this is something that there can be an overarching like action plan or follow-ups for also the chair for the council to also establish as well. I really do like this approach, and I think this also sets up newer counselors for success more, just because this is really trial by fire hose in a lot of ways. There's just so much information that it's impossible to know everything on day one. Having some easy documents like this just to not get completely fully, not to completely fully understand each subject matter, but just to understand where the topics are at this current time in the council year is going to be very helpful for what is in the reality of our decision-making, what is not at this point, or what is potentially there, but it's just not being discussed. So again, just to say again, thank you for the work that you put into this.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Sprague. This reminds me of the work you did on the housing, the homelessness issue. So yeah, definitely going back to this, we know how much we did this year and what needs to be focused on more maybe next year. So I appreciate the efforts you invested in this. It's definitely helpful for us to see this inviting. When in our heads, everything is scattered and there's a lot that's going on, but to have that written and detailed, I think this is really neat. Thank you so much.
Any other comments on content or here? I think this is not meant to lock anybody in, but it is meant to be a guide for where we're going. And I think as we look at some of these issues, there are a number of issues that have been on our agenda for quite a while that really, I believe, should be brought to resolution, but they have a tendency to kind of slip through the cracks. And when we have issues related to staffing in a given department, or when we have other priorities or things that come up, it's very easy to lose track of some things and just not follow up in the way we might wish to, or act quite as expeditiously as we might want to. And so I think, I would like to bring this back, have us all take a little bit more of a look at it and bring it back and just touch base on it, maybe in our last committee meeting for the year, and see if any other councilors have anything they want to add or any other comments on this. And then we can lay it out, and those of you who remain can take care of it. Okay. Hi, Ann. Ann. Hi, Ann.
Yeah.
I think the camera issue might be there for Wi-Fi.
I actually can't hear you
Oh.
for some reason, so. But I know if you're asking me for the next agenda item, it's overnight shelters, which Anya Collette, our planning analyst, was going to present. So I'll keep working. I tested it earlier and it was working, so I'll keep at it.
Hey, Nicolette. Hi.
Hi. So this is just to follow up from our last discussion. I did create draft language for shelters, incorporating what you all had said before. Primarily that we would be citing them at least 100 feet away from residential zones. And then also putting a lot more stipulations in the definition as far as they have to have a transportation plan, they have to have an, operations, security, things like that.
Storage.
Right. The things, some of the things we didn't put in there, we're renaming the use from emergency shelter to something else, just because the Department of Housing and Urban Development and Maine Housing use the term emergency shelter for funding. And we thought it would be best to align with that. That's just our recommendation. And then also on the cap, that was a significant source of contention during the public hearings on this before. And based on conversations we have had with the current shelters, they don't plan to go beyond that capacity. So that is sufficient for them. So we did keep that in there. If you're okay with these changes, we plan to have this on the October 17th planning board hearing and second reading on the 23rd.
Councilor Shaver.
I was gonna say, the wording of emergency shelter, if we could have in all of the documentation or anything, notices that go out, that there was also a definition, because I was confused by the term emergency shelter when this first came up too.
Right.
And so even though the official term will be an ordinance or whatever for emergency shelter, that we have a very clear definition so that people understand what that means.
Okay.
Councilor Dow.
Thank you. Thank you for this. I would motion that staff recommendation that it goes on to the planning board.
Second. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the work and talk about something that you want to get done.
It took us a lot to get to this document, a lot of discussion. I'm wondering how it's gonna look like when it goes to the planning board. People complain about lack of shelter for the unhoused during the winter time. Business owners in the downtown area struggled during winter. The library struggles. So the city council and our staff worked hard to put this together. Now, when it gets to the board, to the planning board, where are we gonna go? I mean, I hope people will be open-minded to this, because we can't just complain and not help us move forward with what we plan. I mean, this has been very carefully written, discussed. I can't imagine what else to be done to make this happen. I'm really concerned when it goes to the planning board. It's not because the planning board does not want to move forward with this, but because we know that the public comments might not be in favor of this, but I hope people will be open-minded.
Councilor Dow.
Thank you. And I really appreciate what you're bringing up, Councilor Yakubov. You know that there's pushback on all sides. I would say my take at this point is a couple different things, but I think when it goes to planning board, we're going to hear from people again, as they will. But it's not supposed to be an emotional decision by the planning board. And this is things that have come before them before, and especially the cap of 70, because we heard people really concerned about it being higher than that. I'm hoping that will resonate, and also that there's no new proposed shelters. And it's like this with so many so many different zoning and code changes and planning boards, like people get so upset at the idea when it's literal, it's just, we're just doing it so it's there. And like, this has to be including to move forward with the ARPA funding that we forwarded to BCHC for Hope House, like this has to be done. And so, yeah, just seeing it so many times, but I think what I tried to do, and I think anyone listening who doesn't understand why this is important, is to talk to those who don't and share how, again, it doesn't mean there's a new shelter coming in. It's not in the scheme of things really changing anything except making it so that it's in law by the city. And that it's just to help maybe take some of the fear away while also reminding folks of like just how important it is in the compassion and all of those things, because we've all heard from lots of people with lots of strong feelings in all directions. And I hope that people will understand why this is so important and supportive.
Yeah, and when we say the planning board, it's not, I'm not meaning that, they are the ones who, we don't want that, but I'm talking about the pushback, of
Yeah.
course. I mean, they will discuss it, they will, review it, but definitely if there's a huge pushback, that's where, decisions can be rough to be made.
And I think a lot of the pushback came from people where it wasn't so narrowly cited before. So this really narrows it down to just a few areas. I think that would eliminate a lot of it. And people worried about the schools and stuff, and this wouldn't be considered.
I think that'd be an important part for either you or the planning board or whoever to make really clear is that this is not the same that went out a
Proposition.
year or so ago.
Yeah.
That this is now, even if it was like, here's what it was, and now here's what it is. Like, this is what we changed, kind of like our plowing maps. Here's what we had, here's what's new. Might be a helpful piece of information at the start of the presentation, just because.
Right.
I'd follow up on that and add that this is a relatively short time getting this from here to the planning board. And even though public comment can sometimes be a bit of a problem, I don't think we want to err on the side of in any way discouraging it. We need to really make sure that people who should know about this know about it, and we encourage the public comment. Not that you're not going to do that, but I think getting the information prepared and out there in a form where people can really understand it, because this was, as I recall, a very heated discussion with the planning board, and I think it took them 2 meetings to get through it before it got back to the council. So I think we want to be prepared for it could happen again, that it be heated. But I think what Council Schaefer is saying is to make it very clear that it's not your father's Oldsmobile. That I think that would be very helpful. But I think we need an active process of encouraging people to comment, because this is such a substantive issue.
And the notice will have a link to a website where we'll have all the pertinent information, and we'll also maybe change up the notice to be more clear on the things that we talked about. So it's like people know exactly what's changing.
If we have a list of people who made public comment to the planning board at its last sessions, and we have ways of contacting them, if we have emails or anything, it might be worthwhile to reach out to the people who were most concerned and make sure they know what we're doing. So we have a motion to accept staff recommendation, and we have a second. Any other comments, concerns? So that will pass it. Thank you. And I don't think we have
Who's next? Robin.
Robin.
Technical difficulties.
I know she's texting me going,
Still trying.
Luckily, people in the room.
Right, we know the drill, so she's prepared us well.
Robin Stenney. Hi,
Hi.
and you're going to talk to us about rental registries and license update.
Yes, so this is a continuation of a discussion that we had in July. So our staff went back and reworked some things and did a little bit more research to try to bring you a little bit more of an expanded idea on the notion of a pilot program and some really compelling elements of a program. I think what is challenging here is that we're trying to balance and really take into account varying perspectives of many stakeholders while also trying to advance our own priorities, right? So I believe that I tried to capture how a pilot program can be fluid enough to be able to have a high degree of engagement in the community and also remaining integral to the purposes of a rental registry. It's interesting because as we were going through and talking about other issues, I'm sitting here thinking about how it all really relates to that sort of campaigning and how we're presenting this information. And we really want to make sure that whatever we come up with and when we present this to the public, that it's not sort of adversarial or punitive in any way. And so as many of the ideas that we can come up with, to really co-produce something that really works. It isn't I don't have the ability to sort of foresee and imagine every scenario that could represent a barrier here. But one of the things that I would look forward to doing is finding a good way to capture that, to be able to try to make sure if there's a specific scenario or set of circumstances that happen often, that at least we have a way to work around that, or we have a ready or prepared avenue to address those things. The pilot that we discussed was a period of time before the full valuation of the city, in which time there would be an opportunity to make those changes permanent. That could give us an opportunity to implement some things and see how they work, while looking at sort of the overall consistency of, what a program should look like. And I did provide this committee with some examples just to kind of see what it looks like on the outside. And if you wanted to do any sort of digging to see, what were some major attitudes around different initiatives in other cities, but we can all imagine, and we've been here long enough to know that there's going to be people that are all very concerned about the tenants in their own buildings or tenants that live there and occupy those buildings. And we all really want the same thing at the end of the day. So.
Councilor Davenport?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the agenda tonight made me so happy. These are my favorite. I really appreciate the way you come at this, especially the pilot program piece. Because just like, we talked about the snowplow stuff earlier, like trying something out, testing it, see what works. And slowly easing folks into things if that's the route we go, and really showing that we do value the feedback of the public and seeing how things grow that way. So I'm excited about the way that this can go, and showing that voluntary buy-in, because I think that can be again, just like we're talking about with snow, if you plow a little bit of your neighbors, does that lead to someone else doing it? So, and like Stanford's Good Neighbor program, I think those are great. So I think, as Councilor Schaefer and others brought up before, the more clear we can be about what it is and how it's working and why. But I think the pilot piece is great. And also I appreciate the way you guys looked at how this could fall in code versus as you're actually looking at true staffing and the value added that's going to come out of the different pieces. So I appreciate all the work on this.
Thanks.
Councilor Yacob.
Thank you, Robin. I think this is awesome. It looks beautiful. The details in this. What I really like is working with landlords. I think this is very important. I feel to have a successful plan, it means we need to include every party who is, participating in this, and we want them to work with us on this. So it's really good that we are working on this partnership with them to make this work. So I hope it works out.
Councilor Fairclough.
I echoing everyone else, I think it's great. I love the idea of Sanford has the Good Neighbor program. I think that looks great. I also think, and is it already contingent when we do these like credit enhancement agreements for building housing that's gonna be rentals? Are we all, we're not registering those places, right?
Not yet,
So like,
but we could.
but like to make that a requirement of, or facade grants, or, you know, like, we're gonna invest in improving your property, we wanna make sure that the inside is
Mhm.
safe and habitable and all that as well, like, and if that was part of the pilot, that like, yes, we'd love to help you out, however, and then on the flip side, being like, hey, we'd like to help you out, but we also noticed that you need help in this area, we have some funding that can help offset the
Mhm.
costs of bringing your building up to a livable
Exactly.
standard. I think that,
Mhm.
so that it isn't sort of terrifying to have the inspection, that,
Right.
you know, what's gonna happen, but like, what can you do to help? So I think this is great. I think it's something that needs to happen. I also love that you in here say it's not new. Bang, like Sanford's doing it, Orono's doing it, or,
Right.
you know, like other cities are doing it. It's time for us to also be doing this, and I
Right.
think it's great.
And what elements do we like about some of those other programs? And is there anything that I've missed in here that you really want us to kind of research and delve into a little bit more?
Councilor Leonard?
Yeah, so, just echo everyone's comments as well. There was a discussion brought up multiple times during this year about developing a concept of a rental advisory committee as well. I think that might incentivize more landlords to jump into this pilot program, especially if they know that there is a committee revolving around that aspect of rent, tenants, landlords, that they're able to have a seat at the table along with tenants as well. So I'd like to see if there's maybe some collaboration that we can incorporate that with a rental registry as well. I understand that might be too much to ask, but I remember according to I don't know what the stats are right now, but earlier on in the year, we had a very high participation rate with a lot of our advisory committees at the city level. So I think it would be behooving of us to explore that avenue.
Sure, and I do remember your comments in the last couple of meetings that you had touched on this, and as we move into a pilot and potentially design a really robust participation process, that mechanism or that body could eventually turn into something that's permanent in an advisory capacity for sure. Any opportunities to be able to bring in public participation, I think is great.
Any comments? I have a couple for you.
Okay.
One, going back to the earlier part of our discussion about some of the things that were brought up this last year, but haven't really been driven to completion.
Mhm.
One of the things is the housing plan, where we introduced draft at the beginning of September. And we haven't really brought that to closure. We've got a draft that was introduced, but not something that everybody has necessarily agreed to. In that draft, under the implementation of registries, there's one line item there. And it's to implement a registry and expand inspection system for apartments, B&Bs, short-term rentals, and boarding homes. Okay. But A was implement data collection registration process by the fall of fiscal year 2023.
Hmm.
B was clearly define inspection requirements for each type of housing and phase in any expansion of inspection requirements in fiscal year 25, which your proposal goes to. Invest ARPA funds in implementation if necessary, so that we could have enough people to do the licensure process if we needed to invest in that. And require property management companies to register with the city and to provide data such as location, number of units managed, number of people served, building ownership, individuals, not just corporations, management structure, contact information for the management company. So those are things which haven't really been accepted yet, but have been proposed as part of an overall housing plan. And I think that if we were developing a housing plan, we could add Councilor Leonard's recommendation to that discussion about having a housing committee or advisory committee or rental advisory committee. But that could be part of the overall discussion. We did have in that draft holding regular work sessions with developers and landlords to solicit input on housing need assessment and expansion strategies. So that's kind of goes to that a little bit, but not in quite as specific a way as you've articulated. So I think that could be worked with in terms of making some of changes to that housing plan and then adopting it as something that would be the guide for committees, council, and staff going forward. So I think we need to come back to that, and maybe at the next meeting we can do that. Robin, and I think this is a lot of good work, but let me parse it out just a little bit, because I see two things here,
Mhm.
at least two things, maybe more.
It's a book, I
One of
understand.
one of them is the aspect of the registration process. And I see it as people, just getting people to register and say, how many apartments are there, where are they located? You know, what's the ownership, those types of things is something that I don't think we need to pilot. I think we could just implement that and require it, that people
The inventory
register.
piece of
The
it, yeah.
inventory piece of it, that we identify how many apartments there are in Bangor, where they're located, how many
Right.
units there are, who's managing them.
Mhm.
That inventory component, I don't think we need to wait on that. It's gonna take time, and I don't think we should wait until we do the comprehensive reevaluation. That's more aligned with the licensing piece and the inspection piece. But the inventorying of how many units we have in the city, I throughout our housing discussion, I would, like to know, how much of the city is really based on apartments and other types of properties, and how much is general residential.
Right.
And we haven't got that.
Right, we have some
We have
maybe
pieces,
estimates, right?
some estimates and some pieces, but that's something I think we could do fairly quickly. Within saying, get started this fall and get everything registered in 6 months. I mean,
There are definitely some low hanging fruit in that we have we have inventory that we already maintain for projects and things that we do with landlords currently.
Mhm.
But all of our partnerships with Penquist and Bangor Housing and other landlords that we regularly come in contact with, those are low hanging fruit to, have them submit their, property addresses and that sort of thing. That could be done rather quickly.
so I'd like to see us, I think it would also send a message that we're really serious about this, to implement a piece rather than waiting any further. I mean, I know that since I came on the council, a number of councilors, Councilor Davitt in particular, has raised this issue repeatedly. And I think other councilors have mentioned it and wanted to get it done. And I would like us to have a strategy that doesn't just say, oh, well, we'll wait on this some more,
Mhm.
but rather implement something, a piece of it soon, rather
So
than
some
later.
kind of
phase
phases.
it in. I
Okay,
mean, the first phase being the registration and the second phase being the pilot on the licensure, which I think is a good idea, work with the owners and pilot the licensure piece. But move and engage people as you have recommended, and as other councils have said. And make sure that we're working collaboratively as possible. But that shouldn't interfere with just asking people to register their properties. So I would be inclined to parse this out a little bit and divide it into two pieces. So, any reactions or comments, Councilor Davitt?
Thank you. And thank you, Councilor Sprague, for bringing that up. I have appreciated the team effort on this one, in that front. And I guess I have thought about this so much that I didn't really separate out the pilot license piece, because I would definitely support what Councilor Sprague is also addressing as far as getting the registration piece going as soon as possible. We have long before you were on staff, been looking to do that. But part of me was just like, let's just do whatever we can at this point, in terms of if if it is the council will to, as a whole to do a pilot for all parts, then we'll go forward with that. But if there's a way that we can propose this and have it be the registration and face that piece in a way that makes sense, but is also still doable as quickly as possible.
I would agree with trying to get an inventory, and if there is something that we can do to say, hey, if you just fill out this form and can tell us what you have for apartments, we're gonna give you a 25% discount on your first 3 years of your license. And just to sort of,
It would be great.
you know, like, or some sort of incentive for landlords to just go on and say, here's my building, I have 3 apartments, it's 3-2, it's whatever, and to have there be some reason for people to volunteer their information instead of going around door to door, trying to figure it
Sure,
out.
with the clipboard.
And then just say like, this is part of a 2-step, 3-step plan that's going to end with inspections and all of that. But however, I think there's a lot of decent landlords who would be like, yeah, okay, whatever, you're gonna give me $100 off when I actually do the inspection, great. Sign me up, and just to get on the board, so they have some sort of incentive to voluntarily list your property.
I think that's a great idea, and I think, you know, even if we looked at some of our other funds that might be available through ARPA or other sources
Mhm.
to subsidize that phased-in process, then we could do that and create the incentives for people to be willing to participate. So I think that, you know, this is will be multi-step, but I'd really like to.
We'd like to be able to say, where's the low hanging fruit and the easy
Yeah.
win there?
And just move that heck, this is a lot of fine ideas here and looking at Sanford and some of the other things that maybe we can tie it to our plowing plan. We'll plow by your apartment. If it's registered.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
We'll send Frosty by your house first.
That's right. We don't-
That's right.
No sidewalk plowing unless you're registered. Something like that.
You can name us
No.
off that. I don't know, that's not.
And do you have any comments? If you can hear me, anything else?
She's muted.
You're muted, so if you have anything.
I can read her lips a little bit.
You can read her lips,
I'm
okay.
not
Yeah,
quite sure.
we'll lose her.
All
So,
right.
Yeah, don't be worried
So,
that we'll.
Robin, is this enough for you here in terms of the direction that you need, or is there anything else that?
Yes, what I'd like to do is take your comments and try to come up with a structure that at least there's a there, as they say, you know, just to kind of give it a little bit of an outline and figure out what works, you know, in terms of the incentives and, you know, what could we do with CDBG and, you know, subsidizing license fees and, you know, really try to sort of put something on paper so that we do feel like we're not just, you know, chewing on this indefinitely. So I really, really appreciate that. I've done work with, for example, Waterville never got beyond the chewing. So I'm really excited that everyone's really willing to buckle in and see what we can do. And
I think going back to some of our earlier discussions, definitions are important and clarity, and we're making some progress on that with B&Bs and short-term rentals and things. I'd also say, you know, on the follow-up list that we had tonight, one of the things that was mentioned is there's a letter that planning board member Don Lahar sent to all of us about definitions of units, and I think he raised the issue. He said, well, you know, while we're defining short-term rentals, we should point out that there is no definition of apartments. So if we're going to be adopting a comprehensive strategy where we have different types of housing defined, and we have short-term rentals and we have B&Bs, you know, then, you know, how do we define apartments? And, you know, should that be filled in? Because it isn't really part of the definition set. So I don't have a particular recommendation about that, but I think that that's a legitimate issue that he raised. And if it isn't defined, then maybe that's a discussion for the planning board to have and for them to make a recommendation to us.
that's definitely something to
So-
forward.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thanks,
Thanks a lot.
guys.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Like me to make a motion. And we'll be going to executive session 1 MRSA 4056C, disposition of real property or economic development.
Okay, we will have a vote at going into executive session. Council Schaefer,
Yes.
Council Dava,
Yes.
Council Yakubaga,
Yes.
and myself will be a yes. So we'll be in executive session.
Great.